Hey everybody, and welcome to GeekTalk Season 3, Episode 1. My name is Jan Willem, I'm the creative director here at WebinarGeek, and today I'm sitting with...
Brian van Anrooy.
Yes, well,
Thank you.
welcome back. Welcome back.
Great to be here
Yeah,
again.
yeah, indeed.
I was here, I think, in Season 1. And,
Season 1, regular guest.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Happy to be back.
So, Brian, you know the drill, because actually we made this up together, right?
Yeah, that is true.
This is
The
the icebreaker, and this is the best, most memorable way to start a conversation. Actually, it goes like this. We have a lot of different cards with statements on it, and the statement is actually a great conversation starter. So I'm gonna pick a card for you
Works,
today.
by the way, also very well on events to just like have this. And then to ask random people, hey, pick a card. And then just have a good conversation
Exactly,
about it.
and that's what we did in Amsterdam.
Yeah,
We just
exactly.
the line with all the people waiting for coffee, and then we just said, pick a card, and we just started random talking.
Yeah, and it's not just about webinars. It can also be about geeky stuff, like which
Exactly.
Pokemon do you like the most?
Yeah,
whatsoever.
Batman or Superman.
Yeah.
So the statement, or actually more, it's a question. Like, what topic do you love to talk about?
Well, if it's work related, then I like to talk about lead generation, and especially in a personalized way and scalable at the same time.
Right. So if I would come across you at a party, you would say, "Hey, I'm Brian."
No. Like party like, then it would be I think a bit more about series, video games,
exactly.
like these kind of things.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
work related, this is I
All
think
right.
the most interesting thing.
Okay, this is interesting. So you said personalized and scalable lead generation.
Yeah.
All right. And today we are actually going to talk about content repurposing. So right now we have a topic that you're knowledgeable about. You know a lot of things about.
Yeah.
How would the path go from your knowledge, a topic of passion, of interest, to actually going to repurposing that?
Well, I think that, of course, that the word scalable addresses it immediately. So you want to have something scalable, and repurposing your content and like streaming your content over and over again makes it already scalable.
Yeah, true.
I think that is one. I think that everyone likes the personal approach.
Yeah.
Especially with video,
Yeah.
like seeing a person, hearing him or her talk, getting this trust bond is super important. But you cannot do that with the account executives here at WebinarGeek can do that with one person at a time if it is really like personal.
Yeah.
But if they are hosting webinars, for example, then they are already talking to a bigger audience,
Yeah.
let's say 100 people.
Yeah.
But if you put that recording on automated, repurposing your content that you once did recorded live, then you make it scalable, because then every 5 minutes they can talk to 100 people, or every day. To make it a bit more realistic. But I mean, and that way you repurpose your content in a way that it still feels live, because you once hosted your webinar live, and at the same time, when at the end of that webinar you are offering a free demo, personalized demo, then people will recognize the same account executive because they see the same face.
Yeah,
they're like,
exactly.
hey, I've seen you in that webinar.
This was indeed, I remember it was indeed the topic of your 7-minute talk during the Mexico event.
Yeah, and the Webinarverse. Yeah.
So actually you had a live talk for an audience in Germany, and then we repurposed that during a talk show
exactly.
during the Webinarverse.
Yeah. And that's especially indeed like repurposing the topic to like just it's a different audience. The people who watch the Webinarverse are much more already like familiar with webinars, I think, or at least that was the assumption that we made.
Yeah.
And at DMXCO, you also have people who have no idea. That's not completely true. That everyone knows what a webinar is.
Yeah.
I think at this moment, but like how to host a webinar, or what are the things that you need to think about for hosting a webinar is a bit harder for that audience. So it is repurposing the core of the story, but like adjusting it then a little bit on the edges so that it fits the target audience that you're talking to.
Yeah, indeed. And so can you take us a little bit on the scalable part of the entire story? So how would you, if you have set up your lead generation funnel, which is a great topic for next GeekTalk as well. We'll see you back here on the couch.
I guess so.
But so let's say that last part, like the scalable part, the repurposing part of that content. How would you do that with webinars?
Well, what I advise always is to start with a live webinar, because with that live webinar there is a certain touch that you see that it is live. It's not a perfect recording.
Right.
After that, you have indeed a recording. You can start repurposing it by indeed creating an automated webinar, but also by cutting pieces out of that webinar and using it for your advertisements, for example. Really bringing back that, and in our company, it is the account executives who are the face of the company, together with the people from support as well, but especially if we are talking about lead generation, it is the account executives. You want to have their faces on the internet as webinar experts. Doesn't matter if you are coming for WebinarGeek or who else, they are the webinar experts. They can solve your challenge.
And afterwards, so the you say the account executive is very important part in making the connection with the audience. What other channels? So you have your live webinar, you have your recording. Then what? How do you? In what way do you repurpose or chop it up? And
so you can of course very easily convert a live webinar to like an automated webinar in 3 clicks in WebinarGeek at least. And especially also because of that live webinar, if you host it for a bigger audience, let's say above 50, then you see, especially if you're using interactions like a chat or polls, what people like, what makes them engage with the webinar. When are they responding the most? What questions are they asking? All these kind of things. And these are the moments that people are like sitting on the edge of their seat, kind of. And if you cut that part out of the webinar and you use that for social media posts, or maybe even YouTube ads, then you immediately have a trigger that people are like, oh, hey, that's nice. And that is like based on data, because there were actually people like triggered by the things that you said.
Indeed.
Sometimes it's of course because of the whole story, but maybe it is like you say like, hey, with WebinarGeek you can solve sales. Look at our sales page, and that is the thing that drives people. That is like, oh, that's nice. If you see that happening, then use that sales page and that part of the webinar recording in an advertisement.
I really like that, because actually with then you create like a mothership webinar, and you have all these little parts that point back to the webinar, right?
Exactly.
So for instance, if you say like, hey, I have a quiz or a poll, or you have even questions from the audience, even a question from the audience can be a at the beginning of a LinkedIn post. And then in the LinkedIn post, you can refer back to you just create a structure where, and then you have repurposed a question from your webinar. So there's unlimited. If you have your live webinar recording, that's actually the starting point, and there's unlimited ways to repurpose it. So I know you're also very competent in creating email and email marketing. So how does that fit in the repurposing strategy?
Yes. With like if you are using, of course, automated webinars, then you can add follow-up emails. That can be very much like automated as well, email sequence. And what works very well for us is that we are sending some automated emails from the email address from the account executive. So you have the feeling that you are again in touch with exactly the person that you saw during the webinar, and exactly that person is asking, shall we meet? So that feels like, I mean, also today, one of our account executives even told me that the first response that he gets at a demo is like, hey, you're a famous guy.
Oh yeah?
I
know you. I saw your face
that
somewhere.
Is of course also, that gives me energy that the plan works to have a personalized, scalable strategy. But it is of course also like a nice way to start start a conversation with a potential lead, that someone is saying like, hey, you're famous.
Exactly.
Oh. Then it gets a bit easier to sell things, right?
No, indeed. So it comes with two things. If you're talking about content repurposing, you need to think about the content, so the image, the text, the value that you're repurposing.
Yeah.
But it also person repurposing,
Yeah,
actually,
yeah,
because you're
exactly.
repurposing, in this case, the account executive in the live webinar, in the email, probably it's the best person to create that LinkedIn post.
Yeah.
For instance, if our colleague here from account executive starts with that post, check out the webinar. So there would be all these touch points with the same person. So
and this also, of course, so the account executives save a lot of time with, for example, writing emails, because that is automated.
Yeah, exactly.
But that gives them at the same time more time to create emails for niche groups.
Yeah.
So if we see that you are coming from a certain industry or based on company size, we can write new emails again. So that makes it just as scalable, but even more personalized, because they are saving time on these kind of things.
And then they can actually create new webinars for this niche.
So you can keep on with repurposing content. It's of course great that you save time, but how are you going to use that time to make repurposing content even better? That's of course by optimizing the flow. And if you are like collecting data from your leads or customers, then have a look at, especially in an international organization, where is your audience from? So country-wise, really like geographical. What kind of industry are they working for? What is the size of the company? These are things that you can always use. Every company is located somewhere. Every company has one employee or more, and it fits somehow into an industry. If you can like see the trends there, then it gets much more interesting to make content that you again can repurpose to all these leads for a specific niche. Even very personalized. If you're getting an email like, "Hey, university," of "Hey, person from university, we made a webinar about how to use webinars for education. Here you go." That feels much more personalized than, "Here you have a demo for WebinarGeek."
It's indeed, it's actually mind-blowing, and you can never run out of ideas anymore.
No,
it's just like
and then if you have the content, then it is also partially the job of just optimizing. If you made that webinar for the educational industry, and you are seeing that it doesn't perform very well, then you can also learn from that, and then that's less repurposing, but at least learning, and then just optimizing on the go.
Wow. Well, we're almost at the end of our talk, so I've got actually one final question. I think that repurposing is still not something that is on all agendas from companies, marketeers, because probably they don't know. So they need to watch this Geek Talk in order to get some in-depth information.
That for sure.
So to these people that do not repurpose their content or repurpose their persons from the company, what would you like to say? How can they start?
The live webinar is not over when you press stop webinar.
Oh, I love that.
The webinar just begins after that.
Oh, I love that. Yes. That's great.
This just really came out of me at this moment. So it's like something like that.
That's pure. It's pure. I know. I can feel it. No, it's the live webinar is not over when you stop the webinar. Stop the webinar is actually starting. Yeah. I think we can finish this webinar off with that golden point of knowledge. So thanks everybody for watching Geek Talk Season 3 Episode 1, and we will be back. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.